Hey there, meatballs! Woohoo! That is what I'm going to start calling these little figures found in many board games and anyone who subscribes to my channel. Up until a few weeks ago, I called these little guys meeples, but then a German board game publisher called Hans im Glück sent a cease and desist letter to a small indie game studio telling them to remove their game Meeple Inc. from the crowdfunding site GameFound because it was an infringing project. Apparently, Hans im Glück had trademarked the word meeple even though they didn't create it. It was coined by gamer Alison Hansel back in the year 2000 and has been widely used in the board game community for over 2 decades. I made a video about this topic and posted it last week and it kind of blew up. I suggest watching that first if you haven't already. You can watch it right here. I wasn't expecting my video to get so much attention, but clearly a lot of you agree that this is an important topic that we need to talk about. And boy, did you talk about it. There are so many comments on this video, I'm finding it hard to keep up. I always try to read and respond to every comment on my channel, but I'm definitely finding it overwhelming and I haven't been able to respond to everything. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the most important points that were brought up in those comments. Now, since my video came out, Hans im Glück has still not sent a press release or posted about it at all on their social media accounts. It doesn't look like they're going to budge from their position or revoke their trademark, which, just as a reminder, is only with the German Patent and Trademark Office because the EU Intellectual Property Office denied the use of their trademark for toys and games. And just a quick note that when I was looking at the Hans im Glück website to confirm they still haven't posted about what is going on with Meeplegate, I came across this page on their website called Meeple and the Author. On this page, they acknowledge they did not invent the word meeple and say that the meeple has now become a household word, and we have gratefully adopted this. That's pretty wild that they admit on their website that the word was a household word. And if a word is in common use, it is ineligible to be trademarked. And they also say they gratefully adopted the word. Weird way to show gratitude by then turning around and threatening a small studio that uses that household word in their game. But anyway, for us, the first order of business is what are we going to call these things now? I sure as heck don't want to call them meeples anymore, and a lot of you had some great suggestions. Here are my favorites: mopples, freeples, gamples. There were also some good ones on a recent Dice Tower news video where they talked about Meeplegate, people, weeple, and my personal favorite, meatballs. Woohoo! I'd also like to suggest we call them Hansels, in honor of Alison Hansel or Hansel, who came up with the word 24 years ago. But then Hans im Glück might trademark Hans and we'll be right back where we started. Let me know in the comments which name you like best and if you have any other suggestions. Although several of you theorize that we might see the Streisand effect here, where the use of the meeple might actually increase because of the attention this story has received. This is called the Streisand effect in reference to a photo that was published online in 2003 as part of a series of photos showing the California coast. And one of the photos showed actress and singer Barbra Streisand's house. Barbara and her lawyers sued the photographer for $50 million, claiming the photo was a violation of her privacy and demanded it be taken down immediately. At the time of the lawsuit, the photo had only been downloaded 6 times. After filing the lawsuit, that number jumped to 400,000 views within the first month. She eventually lost the suit, had to pay the photographer's legal fees, and the photo is still online today. Personally, I think the meeple situation has scared enough people that we won't see meeple being used as much as before. And some of you argue that it's the publisher's responsibility to always research if the words in their game are trademarked. And yes, I do agree that publishers need to make sure that the exact title of their game isn't already in use or trademarked, but expecting publishers to look up if every common word in their game is trademarked is a bit ridiculous. This would be like saying they need to look up if the words card, board, or dice are trademarked. Here is something that I think will help publishers know that meeple is trademarked in Germany. I would like to suggest that Hans im Glück add information about their trademark on their website with contact information. I said in my last video that I don't support a boycott of Hans im Glück because that would directly impact the designers who have games with them and rely on the royalties they make from the sales of the games. A lot of you commented about how you disagree with that stance and talked about how impactful a boycott would be and how it's really the only power that consumers have over companies that do things like this. Dr. McFly28 wrote, I disagree about the boycott. The community has a responsibility to condemn behavior such as this, and hitting big companies' profit margin is the only way to get their attention. There might be collateral damage, sure, but board game designers can also start reconsidering with which publishers they want to collaborate and not affiliate with those who openly practice predatory and exploitative strategies. I understand what you're saying. And yes, I will not pitch concepts to Hans im Glück, and I would encourage other designers to do the same. It really is unfortunate that other independent designers are caught in the crosshairs, especially if they weren't aware of this trademark situation before they signed their game with Hans im Glück. The whole thing sucks, but I do understand that boycotting is a powerful way to send a message, and hopefully Hans im Glück listens. But as many of you pointed out, a company trademarking a common word or phrase is not new. Here are some of the ridiculous trademarks you mentioned in the comments. Feel free to pause and screenshot this if you want to spend your entire day going down all of these rabbit holes. One of the examples that I want to highlight was shared by Paul Hammer 2279 and referred to Games Workshop trying to remove a book from Amazon that was written by author MCA Hogarth with the word Space Marine in the title, which Games Workshop claimed they had the trademark for. Hogarth was understandably shocked, as many folks pointed out Space Marine dates back to at least the 1930s, appearing in a variety of science fiction, including works by Robert Heinlein. It is a science fiction icon. So the notion that any single entity, much less a gaming company, could have broad rights in the Space Marine is outrageous. But in this situation, the author fought back, along with help from the Electronic Frontier Foundation and people with large audiences like Will Wheaton. They presented their case to Amazon, and Amazon restored the book for sale on their platform. Another example I want to highlight is in reference to the word doodle. Hunter Meyer wrote, we had this exact same issue with the word doodle when the makers of Doodle Jump tried to trademark doodle. This is after the app stores had a doodle section. They got big and they thought they could roll everyone with doodle in their app name. Gamers and devs rallied against them. We use the power of the collective voice. Not continuing to fight sets a precedence of acceptance. Doodle Jump eventually backed down after dealing with the blowback. Where is the Free the Meeple movement? One of the other examples I want to highlight was mentioned by Lego Assassin 098 about Taco Tuesday. Apparently, a chain of restaurants called Taco John's had the trademark for Taco Tuesday since 1989. But in 2023, Taco Bell challenged their trademark. Taco John's, the regional claim that has Taco Tuesday trademarked, announced Tuesday that it's ending its fight in defending the phrase and will abandon it because it doesn't want to pay the legal fees that come with the fight against Taco Bell. So you're saying that if someone challenged the Meeple trademark in Germany, it could be cancelled? I wonder who could be our Taco Bell. According to the German Patent and Trademark Office, cancellation upon request by a third party. Others may also file a request for the cancellation of your trademark and can base this request on grounds for refusal, lack of distinctiveness, misleading or descriptive indications, bad faith, etc., or on non-use of the trademark, cancellation on grounds for revocation. Interesting. There was one example that I didn't include on the list because it was for a patent, not a trademark, but it was mentioned many times in the comments and deserves its own section in this video, and that is the patent for tapping. You may have heard of a little game called Magic the Gathering. It was created by designer Richard Garfield and released in 1993. Magic is an incredibly popular trading card game where players buy or trade cards to build up their library that they can draw from to create a deck that they will use to face off against their opponent. Wizards of the Coast published a game and then applied for a patent for the method of play in 1995. Patenting a board game is fairly uncommon and unnecessary. Patents are meant for brand new inventions, and most board games use elements of or inspiration from pre-existing games. According to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, for a patent to be issued, your invention must meet 4 conditions. Able to be used, the invention must work and cannot just be a theory, a clear description of how to make and use the invention, new or novel, something not done before, and not obvious, as related to a change to something already invented. So if you're a board game designer, please don't spend hours and hours of your life writing out a patent application for your board game. That time would be better used actually playtesting your game and coming up with new ideas. Back to the patent for Magic the Gathering. The most important aspect of the patent to the board game design community was the inclusion of tapping a card. Tapping a card means turning it 90 degrees to show it has been used. and then untapping it to reset it to its original position to show it can now be used again. Many designers did not want to risk getting sued by Wizards of the Coast, but we continued and still continue to use the mechanic of rotating cards to indicate they have been used. We just use different words like rotate or exhaust. I grabbed Wordsy from my shelf as an example. This is a great word game by the awesome designer Gil Hova. And you can see here in the scoring section, the rules suggest rotating each letter in your word, adding the values of the rotated letters, and then returning all letter cards to their original orientations. Now, no one needs to worry at all anymore about using the tapping mechanic in their game or calling it tapping explicitly because the patent for the Magic the Gathering method of play expired in 2014. Going back to the trademark of Meeple, Patrick Stanger 9487 commented, to answer the question, why did those other companies that used the word Meeple or the iconic Meeple shape did not get hit by a letter from Hans im Glück? They had permission by HIG. If you look at the German, for some reason, some of the English rulebooks sometimes exclude that part. Rulebooks, for nearly all of the games you mentioned, you'll find that they include a small line crediting or thanking HIG. The notable exception is Monsters and Meeples, and the reason for that is that Monsters and Meeples is not available in a German version. I want to thank Patrick for sharing this info, so let's look into it. I looked at the rulebooks for the 7 games I mentioned in the last video, and I did find credits thanking Hans im Glück for allowing them to use the Meeple word or shape in 3 of the 7 games I mentioned. Mutant Meeples, Terror in Meeple City, and Meeple Land all acknowledge Hans im Glück in the credits of their games. I could not find any acknowledgements in the English or German rulebooks for the other 4. Tiny Epic Kingdoms, Meeple War, Meeple Circus, and Meeples and Monsters. Patrick does note that there isn't a credit in Meeples and Monsters because they didn't have a German version of their game, which is where Hans im Glück has their trademark. But both Meeple Circus and Tiny Epic Kingdoms, which doesn't have Meeple in their title but uses the word Meeple 67 times in their rulebook and the shape is featured prominently, do not credit Hans im Glück, and they do have German versions of their games. But this is a small sample size of all of the games that have featured the Meeple shape or have the word Meeple in their titles. So I started doing a deep dive to search for games that feature the Meeple, have German versions, and do not acknowledge Hans im Glück in their credits, just like Tiny Epic Kingdoms and Meeple Circus. And I was going to share those games here, but honestly, I don't want to shine a spotlight on them in case Hans im Glück then decides to go after them. So I'll just say this. There are even more games out there with German versions that have Meeple in the titles and do not acknowledge Hans im Glück. And there are many games with Meeple in the title that don't have German versions, and I worry the publishers are intentionally doing that to avoid a potential cease and desist letter from Hans im Glück, and that is really unfortunate because you need to publish your game in German to be considered for the Spiel des Jahres. Yes, you heard me right, Spiel des Jahres. My pronunciation of Spiel des Jahres in my last video got a lot of comments. I pronounced Spiel des Jahres as Spiel des Jahres. I have looked up how to pronounce Spiel des Jahres for one of my previous videos a while ago, but apparently I forgot the correct pronunciation. So I apologize to any German speakers who watched my last video, and hopefully Spiel des Jahres is less grating on your ears. Anyway, you need to have your game published in German to be considered for the Spiel des Jahres, which is essentially the Game of the Year award. And with Hans im Glück holding the German trademark specifically, this gives them even more control over the situation and influence other publishers' decisions about whether or not they will make a German version of their game so they can be considered for the award, but then also risk getting a cease and desist letter from Hans im Glück. I suspect we will see fewer publishers and designers use the word Meeple altogether. Randall Atkins 7452 let me know that AEG, the publisher of Monsters and Meeples, will likely not use Meeple moving forward. Ryan Dancy, the COO at AEG, told Board Game Wire, the existence of their litigious activity around this mark establishes enough risk that I don't think it prudent to go near that mark. I probably would recommend against using our Meeples and Monsters trademark today in an all-new product. Which honestly I think is a shame because it's a word that was created by a gamer and popularized by gamers and was used everywhere, and now it's being controlled by a company who claims ownership over it and will likely result in it slowly disappearing from the community altogether. Except, of course, in Carcassonne. I was made aware that I was pronouncing Carcassonne wrong in my last video as well. I guess I said it like Carcassonne with a Z. Yes, I am Canadian. But apparently it's Carcassonne. My apologies. Fat ass. Well, friends, hold on to your butts because an IP lawyer from Germany who has clients in the board games industry just joined the chat. I got an email last night from Philip who told me that I got most things right in my last video with 2 exceptions. 1, the revocation of the trademark due to inactivity has most likely nothing to do with this as they're actively using their trademark anyway. You only need to produce a product called Meeple, which they actually do in Carcassonne. A couple of other people also commented about this. In my last video, I speculated that maybe Hans and Glück sent the cease and desist as a way to keep their trademark active. But that was a wrong interpretation. Like Philip said, they keep it active by actually using it for their business, which they are doing. The second clarification Philip made was, they also don't need legal precedent as that's not a thing in German law. We don't have precedent. What could be possible, on the other hand, is that they tested their case against a smaller company because if they fight back, they would be at a severe disadvantage, and if it comes to a court case, the fallout for Hans and Glück would be less horrific. If they went after a company that could secure good legal representation, they could even lose their trademark. That would be my defense in a case like this, go after the opponent's trademark. In my last video, I suggested that Hans and Glück possibly did this to use it as precedence for any future action they might take against other companies, and that again was wrong. Thank you to Philip for explaining this. Philip also talked about the trademark Hans and Glück pursued in Germany after their initial application with the EU Intellectual Property Office was partially rejected by not including toys and games. Hans and Glück trademarked Meeple in Germany after getting a basically worthless trademark application in the EU. No one objected to the registry at the time, though the registry still could be attacked now. Thank you so much to Philip, an expert in this area, for reaching out to me and sharing your insight. I super appreciate it. To add to this, Duckrut made a comparison about how Hans and Glück got the German trademark for the Meeple after getting rejected from the EU office. Wow, I haven't pulled a dad said no, so I'll ask mom since I was like 8. Now a speed run of some other notable comments. I got criticism for using Wikipedia for 2 of my quotes in my last video. My apologies for that, that's my bad. I took the extra step to go to the Wikipedia sources and quoted directly from them for many of my other points, but didn't do that for those 2, and that's on me. Aaron Bredden 2948 suggested that chess actually featured the first meeples. It's an interesting point. Do you agree that chess pieces are meeples? Let me know in the comments. The Hypist very kindly pointed out that the player pieces in Queen and Kingdomino that I described as having castle-looking heads are crowns. It was a long day. And lastly, I learned that a lot of people hate foreshadowing and were super annoyed when I said, watch until the end to learn about blah blah blah. Well, I didn't do that this video, and so if you made it this far and were hoping for a fun little surprise, well, I hope you're hungry. For nothing. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more videos about game design and the board games industry. Take care, meatballs, and I'll see you in the next video.